Man, though, listen, every now and then in human history, there's a night, a single night that flips the whole script. One of those nights happened over 1,014 years ago in a cave on a mountain outside of Mecca. And it wasn't some Hollywood scene with cameras, lights, and epic soundtracks. No, it was raw, silent, and cosmic. Just one man in solitude searching for answers. And what happened to him inside that cave, it shook him to his core, but it also changed the entire course of human history. I'm talking about the Cave of Hira and the night when Muhammad, who would become the prophet of Islam, had his very first revelation, setting the scene, Arabia before Islam. So let's set the stage. You've got 7th century Arabia. This is not New York City. It's not Rome. It's not some thriving empire with philosophers and universities. No, man, it's desert, tribal life, survival of the fittest. If you've ever been in a desert, you know what I'm talking about. Brutal sun, cold nights, silence that can drive you mad, and beauty that can break your heart. Now, Mecca, this little city in the middle of it all, was unique. It wasn't just a desert outpost. It was a hub. Caravans would roll through, carrying spices, textiles, and goods from Yemen to Syria. And in the center of Mecca was the Kaaba, this cube-shaped building that everyone respected. Even warring tribes would pause their battles if they were near it. That's how sacred it was. But here's the catch. The Kaaba had become filled with idols. Like literally 360 idols inside. A statue for every tribe, every deity. People were making sacrifices to stones, wood, whatever. Spiritually, it was chaos. Morally, too. You had female infanticide, little baby girls being buried alive because they weren't seen as valuable. The weak and poor were crushed. Women had no real rights. Tribal warfare was constant. Society needed a reset button, and that's where Muhammad comes in. Muhammad before prophethood. Now here's what's fascinating. Before he was a prophet, Muhammad wasn't some crazy zealot shouting in the streets. He was calm, collected, a thinker, a guy people actually trusted. They called him Al-Amin, the trustworthy one. If you had valuables, you'd leave them with him. If there was a dispute, he was the guy who could mediate. He worked as a merchant, and he was good at it. Honest, fair, respected. He married Khadijah, this incredible wealthy businesswoman, who saw his honesty and character and basically said, yeah, that's the guy. Together they built a stable, loving home. He wasn't desperate, he wasn't broke, he wasn't an outcast. He had it good, and that makes his story so much more real. Because even with all that respect, money, love, he felt unsettled. Something inside him said, this isn't it. There's more to life than this endless cycle of trade, idols, and tribal ego. So what does he do? He retreats, he climbs. He seeks solitude in the mountains, specifically this cave on Mount Nur called Hira, the Cave of Hira, a place of solitude. Now, if you've never seen the Cave of Hira, let me paint you a picture. It's not some massive cavern like you see in adventure movies. It's small, narrow, barely big enough for a couple of people to sit. You climb up steep rocks to get there, overlooking Mecca, and when you're inside, you can just sit and stare out at the desert, the city, and the stars at night. Man, think about that. No phones, no Netflix, no distraction, just the desert wind, the silence, the stars. You want perspective? That's where you find it. Muhammad would go there for days at a time, bringing some food and water, and just reflect, think, meditate. This is where it gets real for me, because it's like, haven't we all felt that? That urge to step away from the noise of the world, to just unplug and sit in silence. He was doing that 1400 years ago, seeking clarity, seeking meaning, and then one night, everything changed. The night of power. It was the month of Ramadan, which later on would become the holiest month for Muslims. Muhammad is in the cave, maybe half asleep, maybe in deep thought. And suddenly it happens. The air shifts. The atmosphere feels heavy. And then this presence, immense, overwhelming, fills the cave. It's the Angel Gabriel. Now people today, we hear angel and we think of some soft, glowing figure with wings and a halo. But no, this was intense, overpowering, Gabriel grabs Muhammad and commands, "Iqra." Muhammad, startled, replies, "I can't read, I'm not a reader." He was unlettered, not formally educated. But Gabriel insists, again, "Read." He squeezes him so tightly that it's terrifying. This happens multiple times until finally, words pour out. The first verses of the Quran. "Read in the name of your Lord who created man from a clot." Read, and your Lord is the most generous who taught by the pen, taught man what he did not know. Think about that. The very first word of Revelation. Read. Not pray, not fight, not obey. Read. Seek knowledge. Expand your mind. In a society where most people couldn't even read, that's revolutionary. But in that moment it wasn't comforting, it was terrifying. Muhammad was shaken to his core. He runs out of the cave, down the mountain, heart racing, terrified. He rushes home to Khadijah and says, cover me, cover me." Khadijah, the rock. And here's where the story hits deep. Khadijah, his wife, his partner, doesn't laugh at him, doesn't dismiss him, doesn't say, "You're losing it." She covers him, comforts him, reassures him. She tells him, "God would never disgrace you. You're kind, you help the poor, you support the weak, you're chosen for something." She takes him to her cousin Waraka ibn Nawfal, a Christian monk, who knew the scriptures. Waraka listens and says, "This is the same angel that came to Moses. You've been chosen as a messenger." Boom. That's the confirmation. This isn't just a dream, not a hallucination, it's real, the weight of revelation. But here's what's so human about it. Muhammad didn't just jump up and say, "I'm a prophet now, listen to me." He doubted, he feared, he questioned himself, he worried he was losing his mind. That hesitation makes it authentic, because when people fake stuff, they come out confident, polished, with a clear agenda. But when it's real, when it's bigger than you, you stumble, you tremble, you feel the weight, and that's exactly what happened. Revelation wasn't light and fireworks, it was heavy, crushing, life-altering. Why this moment matters. So why is this moment so huge? Because it was the spark that lit the fire of Islam. That night in the cave gave birth to a revelation that would transform the Arabian Peninsula, then spread across the world, shaping civilizations, sciences, philosophies, and cultures. Billions of people trace their faith back to this one moment in the cave. But even if you're not Muslim, this story speaks to something universal: the power of solitude, the courage to face the unknown, the weight of stepping into your purpose even when it terrifies you. That was the Cave of Hira, the beginning, the spark. So we've covered the Cave of Hira, the first revelation, the fear, the shock, the comfort of Khadijah, and the confirmation from Waraka. That's the spark. But here's the thing about sparks. They're small, fragile, and easy to extinguish. And yet if you nurture them, they ignite a fire that can light up the world. That's exactly what happened after that night in the cave. The silence between revelations. One of the craziest parts of the story is what happened next. Silence. After that overwhelming encounter, Muhammad didn't get another revelation immediately. Days went by, weeks, some say months. Imagine that, having this intense, life-shattering experience, and then nothing, radio silence. That uncertainty ate at him. He doubted himself. Was it real? Did it actually happen? Was he crazy? And yet deep down, he knew something had shifted forever. That waiting period, it's like life's way of testing you. You get a glimpse of your purpose, but then you have to sit with it, wrestle with it, and decide if you're going to commit when the call comes again. The revelation resumes. Eventually, it did come again. More verses, more commands, more of this weighty, poetic, mind-shattering speech pouring into him. Each revelation reminded him, this isn't from you. This isn't imagination. This is real. And here's the thing, the Quran wasn't revealed in one night. It came piece by piece over 20, always tied to events, always timely, always speaking directly to what was happening. That's what made it alive. From private to public. At first, Muhammad kept it private. Just his closest circle, Khadijah, his cousin Ali, who was just a kid at the time, his best friend Abu Bakr. These were the first believers. Imagine that tiny group in a city full of idol worshippers, saying quietly, "There's only one God." But eventually the command came, "Take it public. Share the message." And that's where the real struggle began. The clash with Mecca. Mecca wasn't ready for this. Think about it. Their whole economy revolved around idol worship. Pilgrims came to see their gods, spend money, boost trade. If Muhammad's message caught on, if people actually believed there was only one God, all those idols became worthless. That's like someone inventing a free energy source and threatening billion-dollar oil industries. The people in power, they're not going to like that. So the Quraysh, the ruling tribe of Mecca, fought back, first with mockery. "He's just a poet, he's possessed, he's crazy." But Muhammad's words were too powerful. The Quran was unlike anything they'd heard, poetry but deeper, philosophy but divine. It shook people. So the opposition escalated. They started persecuting the believers, torturing slaves who converted, boycotting Muhammad's clan, trying to starve them out. It got brutal. Muhammad's patience, and here's where Muhammad's character shines. He didn't retaliate with violence. For over a decade he preached patience, perseverance, resilience. He endured insults, attacks, but he never compromised on the core message, La ilaha illallah, there is no God but God. That's revolutionary. He wasn't just calling people to pray differently, he was calling them to dismantle a corrupt system built on greed, exploitation, and tribal arrogance. The migration, hijra, eventually the hostility in Mecca became unbearable. So when a group from a city called Yathrib, later Medina, invited Muhammad to come and lead them, he and his followers made the migration hijra. That migration is huge. It wasn't just about survival. It marked the shift from a private movement to a community, a society, a civilization. Muslims even count their calendar from that event. Year one of the Islamic calendar isn't Muhammad's birth or the first revelation, it's the migration. Because that's when Islam became lived reality, building a new society. In Medina, Muhammad wasn't just a spiritual leader. He became a statesman, a lawgiver, a peacemaker. He drafted a constitution that gave rights to Muslims, Jews, and other groups. He built bonds between different tribes who had been enemies for generations. He established systems of charity, justice, and mutual support. It wasn't perfect. There were battles, betrayals, struggles. But the seed planted in that cave on Mount Nur was now a full-grown tree, offering shade to thousands of people. Returning to Mecca, years later, after enduring wars and exile, Muhammad returned to Mecca. And here's the kicker, he didn't return with vengeance. He came with mercy. The very people who mocked him, tortured his followers, and tried to kill him, he forgave them. He entered the Kaaba, smashed the idols, and restored it to its original purpose, a house of worship for the one God. That was the completion of the mission. The circle closed. From the Cave of Hira to the heart of Mecca, in just over 2 decades, one man's terrifying night turned into a global transformation. The ripple effect through history. Now step back and look at the ripple effect. That night in the cave led to a revelation. That revelation led to a community. That community led to a civilization that preserved Greek philosophy, advanced mathematics, invented algebra, pioneered medicine, mapped the stars, built libraries, created art and architecture that still amazes us today. And beyond the science and art, the spiritual message of oneness, justice, mercy kept spreading. Today, over 1 billion people wake up, pray, fast, give charity, live their lives connected to that night in the cave. Why this still matters? So why should you, sitting here in 2025, care about this story? Because it's not just history, it's human, it's universal. It's about what happens when you step away from the noise and sit in silence. When you dare to ask, what's the truth? What's my purpose? It's about how one person's courage to face the unknown can ripple across generations. Muhammad didn't choose to be a prophet. He didn't seek fame. He was terrified at first, but he leaned into it. He accepted the weight, and because he did, the world was never the same. The cave is in all of us. Maybe the Cave of Hira isn't just a place on a mountain in Mecca. Maybe it's a metaphor for that place inside us, the solitude, the silence, the space where we wrestle with our deepest questions. What will you do when your cave moment comes? When life shakes you, when you feel overwhelmed, when the truth presses down on you, will you run from it or will you embrace it? That's the legacy of that night. That's why the Cave of Hira matters.